And welcome to the first our ECA Technical Tuesdays. Yes, we're back, and today we're going to talk about the subject of bonding. So the subject today, and welcome to all our members and those on catch up too, is to bond or not to bond. That is the question. And your presenter today are introduced by myself. I'm 007-671 Darren Crannis. I'm a technical manager here at the ECA. And for the next 15-20 minutes or so, we're going to talk about that famous question to our helpline, to bond or not to bond. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about main protective bonding, so what it is, what an extraneous conductive part. So we're going to set the scene with this today. We're going to go on to supplementary bonding, where earth loop fault impedance values are exceeded. So where regulation 411.3.2 is not feasible. So bonding can help there. And we're also going to touch on an example, commercial kitchens. So we're going to have a few examples in there as well. So we'll go through some common misconceptions of what bonding is. If you joined today for earthing, that will probably be another webinar. Today is only about bonding, but it's all green and yellow. So let's talk about protective equipotential bonding. Okay, it's not to be confused with earthing, so this is only about bonding today. Now, bonding has a very common theme. It serves a function of minimizing the magnitude of touch voltages within a building when an earth fault occurs. And in some cases, in a PME system, it may even reduce the touch voltages due to an open pen, so a fault on the network. So all about reducing that magnitude touch voltage, and that's where bonding comes into its own. Why do we need it? Well, we see this in most installations. It's the staple diet of our AES, of our commonly applied protection measure, automatic disconnection of supply. And it is required in consumer installations where there's extraneous conductive parts which are liable to induce a dangerous potential difference. And this is connected to the MET. So what is an extraneous conductive part? Now, this is a conductive part that's liable to introduce potential, generally earth potential, and it's not forming part of the installation. So examples of these are metallic services, such as water, gas, other pipework, maybe central heating and air conditioning systems, and the same principle should be applied to heat pump installations, where those services are metallic and they come through the ground. Also, telecommunication cables and their outer sheath. And there's a note on our certificates that we can bond those with the mission of the owner of the cable. If not, it can be reported as a departure on the appropriate certificate. So an extraneous part doesn't change if it's metallic and it goes through the earth. Generally, it's what we class earthy, and it's liable to induce sort of potential into that installation. Supplementary protective equipotential bonding. Now, this is often known as additional bonding, so an additional protective measure to ADS. Now, additional protection can be supplementary bonding, and we've seen this along the sort of 15th and 16th edition of the wiring regulations, or it can be the use of 30 milliamp RCDs. And as we're not talking about RCs today, we'll just stick to the bonding, so the green yellow. And that's role to reduce the touch voltages between accessible conductive parts. So many years ago, around bathrooms, you may have noticed a form of green and yellow running around all those parts you are liable to touch, and sort of gave the same as what a 30 milliamp RCD would do, that additional protection. And we use bonding or supplementary protective bonding with increased risk of electric shock. So that may be all through part 7. So those special locations which are an increased risk. And again, it's to reduce that touch potential down to 50 volts or less. So there's a common theme throughout here. As we say, supplementary bonding isn't just for Christmas. There are other places where you can use this. And one of those is when automatic disconnection of supply is not feasible. So a lot of time with large supplies and very, very low earth fault loop impedances and high fault value, so privately owned transformers, large supplies, it may be very difficult to achieve the ZS, the maximum disconnection time. So regulation 419.3 does allow for supplementary protective equipotential bonding. And again, that is to reduce the touch voltage down to 50 volts. So it may not disconnect the device, but it will bring all the metalwork around that area to a safe voltage, not to give you electric shock. So that 50 volt or less. And there's a great guidance in this in the IET Guidance Note 8 about earthing and bonding. So if you want to look at this in further depth, I recommend Guidance Note 8. Now, a very common scenario is where we get asked this is commercial kitchens. They're not a special location in Part 7. They do use metallic surfaces for hygiene purposes, and it is perceived that metallic items such as food preparation tables and movable tables, hot plates, serving counters, and other equipment requires supplementary equipotential bonding. But is bonding really required? Because bonding a surface or a piece of equipment that doesn't necessitate it could actually induce electric shock risk. So by putting green and yellow conductors and bonding surfaces together, such as tables, chairs, windows, etc., if there is a fault, then we're liable to put voltage onto that surface. So as we said before, kitchens are not a special location. They're not in Part 7. So the general rules apply here, and that's for extraneous conductive parts. So if you've got those extraneous services, gas, water, waste, air, any of those sort of services coming in through the ground, then they will just need bonding like any other extraneous service. And again, any exposed conductive parts will again require bonding, and exposed conductive parts tend to be taken care of by the CPC of the equipment. So BS 7671 doesn't mandate that metal surfaces shall be bonded, and that extends to freestanding tables. They're not extraneous and they're not exposed conductive parts, and they're the two questions you really need to ask yourself when you're in this situation. If you were to bond that table, for example, would you actually create an electric shock risk? Now, we don't just stop there. So we're not saying no, and we're not saying yes. What we are saying is considerations are required when you perhaps put a machine in. So we introduce a machine, and that's under its own British standard. It may require bonding. So any equipment, portable or static, with exposed conductive parts should be earthed by its own circuit protective conductor, the CPC. Where this gets more in depth is an example like you see on the screen now is a pass-through dishwasher. So this is a machine, but it has additional tables and other elements attached to it. Now, often these are mechanically connected to form the electrical system. So do they need bonding? Well, normally they're mechanically connected, so they're earthed via the CPC of the equipment. But if it's not, you should check with the manufacturer. So it's really important when you get items like pass-through dishwashers and other kitchen equipment, which has accessories such as preparation tables and sinks, that they are mechanically connected, and you look at the manufacturer's requirements for that. So this is a bit of the spanner in the works. Where we said things don't necessarily need bonding, you need to ensure that when these are exposed conductive parts, they are connected to the CPC. So really, in summary, and this is sort of a quick tour of bonding, is it required? In most installations, yes it is, but not always. Does it overcome engineering challenges? Yes, and when we talk about sort of extending your disconnection times, or where your disconnection times can't be met, the supplementary bonding is really useful in that situation. Is additional bonding always needed in commercial kitchens? Well, Not always, only in certain circumstances, as we've discussed. Do freestanding kitchen counters require bonding? Not according to BS 7671. And what about when we talk about pass-through dishwashers and other equipment? The equipment itself should be fine through the cable CPC. However, you need to have knowledge of the tables and other elements forming part of that system if they're connected to the CPC. And be aware of other standards. So we're not always working in kitchens. We could be working, for example, in telecoms. So telecoms may have other standards, aerial systems, etc. So when you're working in different environments, there might be other British standards that you need to look at too for earthing and bonding requirements. Where can you find more information? We've got some cracking guides on our ECA Technical website. So for our members, that's at www.eca.co.uk/technical. And we have a guidance note for technical bulletin, especially on the bonding of commercial kitchens. And that supplements our other guides on earthing and bonding. This is also available on your ECA app. And we have our helpline available to our members. And you can email us at technical@eca.co.uk. So that really was a sort of a quick stop, a quick overview of sort of bonding, especially sort of focusing on commercial kitchens. And I'm just going to look if there's any questions coming in. So I've just looked across to my colleague Omar. There's no questions coming in, but feel free to put them in the chat and we'll stay online for a couple of minutes. As we've said, we can go back to our previous slide. If our members do have any questions around earthing and bonding or any technical questions in general, then feel free to give our technical manager a call on our helpline.
No questions at the moment, Darren, but if we refer our viewers to the website, as you've done, and also the replay of this webinar will be available to members as well to watch back. Okay,
so as Omar said, yep, our resources are always available on our website, and they're available sort of 24/7 for our members, but our helpline is office hours only. The same as our email, and this will be replayed for our members and available on our ECA website. So thank you ever so much for joining us for this first of many Technical Tuesdays. Also look out for many of our other social media bulletins, some other webinars, talking heads and podcasts we got coming up, which are going to be available to our members. So look out on our social media channels, especially sort of YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter, as well as many others. But for me, thank you very much.